Welcome back to the Tara Palmeri Show.
It is happening.
There's something different about not having editors over you.
Audiences are moving away from trusting institutions and moving towards trusting people.
I gotta say, I really want an Izzy. I need to marry an Izzy. How do I find an Izzy?
Yeah, you need an Izzy.
Johnny Harris is the face of new media, if we're even using that word anymore. He's a global superstar on YouTube with 6.6 million followers who are addicted to his investigations.
I'm wandering through a graveyard of American military equipment.
He's a 36-year-old former Vox journalist who went out on his own during COVID when his show Borders was canceled. But his star has only shot up from there. It's only been 5 years, and now he's expanding and building his own media empire. Johnny is charting the path forward for independent journalists like myself. And since you know I can't resist politics, and he is the man who always goes to the front lines for the story to see it for himself, I had to ask him for his take on President Trump's obsession with Greenland and whether the Finns should be preparing for war with Russia. Check it out. Johnny, thank you for joining the show. This is a huge treat for me.
I'm very happy to be here. Excited to chat.
I am, full disclosure, a Johnny Harris stan. I don't know if that's a phrase, but I watch your videos and I fall into holes into my couch because I watch it on my TV because it's just so beautiful. You really create art and journalism, so I don't feel so bad that I've been like going from one video to the next suggested video to the next one for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm getting smarter.
I love to hear that. That's the whole goal. I really believe that this stuff can be entertaining and fun is maybe too strong of a word, but at least like engaging in a way that isn't just kind of doom and gloom. I try to make it an experience that is worth watching. And so I really appreciate you saying that.
Well, I am actually a believer that news does not have to be news to be boring. So I think like whatever you're doing it right. People need to be informed. And if you're getting people to sit down for over an hour and watch something that will make them smarter, like keep going. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
Yeah.
That is the goal. That's what we're doing over here.
You really have covered everything from global borders to domestic American politics, the rise of nationalism, authoritarianism. You've talked about scandals like white bread.
This is not bread anymore.
Which I actually kind of agree with because I lived in Europe. There's a real story there.
There's a story everywhere. I mean, that's sort of my sort of methodology as a journalist, and being independent allows me to do this. It's just like I'm curious about a lot of things. I have questions. And my job tends to be just to kind of go down that curiosity rabbit hole and be really earnest about it, really be like, I'm going to do it not in the way that I'm expected to, but in the way that's really natural for me, the way that I would want it to be explained. And it turns out that like there's a lot of people who want it to be explained in that same way. And so that's why you get such a weird variety of like Doritos and MSG and white bread, but then also like Vladimir Putin and like the geopolitics of like the Indo-Pacific. Like it's all over the place, but that kind of is a reflection of my curiosity, and I love it.
But if you're a journalist, you just ask questions, right?
Yeah.
Keep following the story where it goes.
Totally. And being independent is this really fun opportunity because you lose something. You lose the big editorial machinery and the kind of distribution machinery of a big institution, but you gain all of this flexibility to be a curious person. And like you notice that people will follow you through your curiosity, even if it's kind of off brand of what you should be saying. The culture of YouTube and the culture of the internet is like people want to follow people and they want to like get into like that person's mind and like see what they're thinking. And the more authentic that is, the more you actually develop a sense of trust. Whereas in the old days, it was like the more sort of revered your institution was and consistent it was, that's where you develop trust. So it's a weird sort of inversion that we're going through right now.
You're right. Like I have noticed just being independent in the past few months that I'm just going with my gut, and there's something different about not having editors over you, kind of gaming out what's going to sell and what's not going to sell.
Yeah, and making those decisions for you, even if you feel very strongly that they're not right, but like because they are the gatekeepers of the editorial voice, and because the institution is required to maintain an editorial voice. Like they're like, we are the New York Times, we are the Wall Street Journal. We have to speak in a Wall Street Journal unified way. Yeah, and it's got to be authoritative. It's got to be in this way. I think it's really cool to kind of think out loud and to be curious out loud which you can't do it in an institution, but on the internet, like that is the whole language of the internet, is like we want people to actually like be curious out loud and then like share, sort of show and tell. And the other cool thing is that you will find your people. I think what's really cool is like I have a bunch of weird interests. And now the people who come back every week or whatever are people who are like down for whatever. Like the algorithm goes out and finds those people for you. You don't need some middleman to do it, which is like, that's an amazing like transition that we've gone through.
Totally. I know exactly what it's like to have to write and speak in a voice. When I worked at ABC News, I was like actually coached to lower my voice because apparently the world sees authority in a more male sounding, deeper voice. Women do not convey that. So I had to learn how to be like, I'm Tara Palmeri reporting from the White House. And then we also spoke in this way where they used gerunds or like the active voice. They'd be like, President Trump walking off Air Force One. You know, it was like, today, speaking from here. And it was like everything had an ing at the end. I was like, this is not how humans speak.
It's an old way of doing things. And I think in the old days, that was like people did turn on the 5 o'clock news and they're like, what does ABC have to say about what's going on in the world?
Right.
And I think that was a good thing for a long time. Like it aggregated the news, put it in this authoritative place. People spoke kind of like aliens, but everyone sort of learned to see that as authoritative. It was factual. Like that was good. We're entering a time where like as the institutions go away, it's kind of scary because it's like, well, who's going to be the gatekeeper of the facts? Like who's going to be the beacons of like this is authoritative and good? I think that's one of the scariest parts of it. There's a lot of really cool parts of it, though, which is like our ability to express ourselves in these very specific, natural, authentic ways.
So what stories do you see actually really resonating with your audience? Like which ones do you think resonate more than others?
I think, you know, my expertise, like I did my graduate studies in international conflict and peace, conflict resolution and peace studies. So I have like a pretty deep knowledge and interest in geopolitics, conflict. I think where I lend the most useful analysis is in that field. I do a lot of stuff about borders, conflict, disputed borders, geopolitics. And I find that a lot of my audience comes to me for that. You know, what's going on in Japan is building up its military in Asia right now. The South China Sea is heating up. What does that mean? And where's some like useful analysis that isn't like wonky kind of think tank or like even like the, you know, foreign affairs type journalism that's a little bit inaccessible. So I would say that's one. But I
do want to get you on some of that, by the way, later on in the episode. I know you've been to the border of Finland and Russia, so I want to talk to you about that and what that means in this time. And also I want to talk to you about Greenland, where you've been recently as well.
Yes, the Arctic. I'm so interested in the Arctic. But yeah, that, like sort of focusing in on the big geopolitical shifts, I think is one thing that people come for. I do think that, and this is a hope, I don't know this yet because I haven't surveyed the audience, but I kind of suspect that people come to the channel because they want a more critical way of thinking. They want it modeled for them. A lot of stuff right now online in terms of like independent journalists is often ideologically driven. It is like a pundit. It is a voice that embodies an ideology and often a political group. And so what they're saying is like it could be very valuable, it could be good analysis, but it's often like very coded in ideology. What I try to do is code my stuff, and I'm saying code, I mean like infuse my stuff with curiosity, critical thinking, explanation, context, history, like these bigger things that are like, yes, we can all fight about what's going on right now,
right?
But here's how we got here. And I think that's so valuable. Here's like the deep story, the deep history.
Totally.
I think that's the like thing that I want to put out to the world. There's a deeper story to everything, and like we can get it.
Right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and sometimes I'll come down with a take, and I have opinions, and those come out, but I don't lead with those. I make sure that those aren't the most important takeaway from my work. Though I feel this sense of like there is a newness to this. Like there's a newness in the sense that it is a moment in time where audiences are moving away from trusting institutions and moving towards trusting people. I think there's a lot of scary things associated with that shift, but it is happening. And so what I am doing with my wife who's also my business partner and the CEO of NewPress, So we are building a creator-led media company where my channel is one channel of now multiple. We've launched 2 others that are hosted by creators who run those channels. We're launching another one, so we'll have 4 by the end of this year. And each of them are their own little empire, editorial empire, where they are a reflection of the creator's mind, the creator's curiosity, the creator's visual style. And all of them are together under an umbrella called NewPress, but they are not one editorial voice. No, we don't dictate each other's editorial voice. Everyone does their own thing, but we support each other. We edit each other's scripts. We sit in on each other's pitch meetings. We have a business engine that supports all of them, meaning who runs the business is out there doing deals, making relationships, hiring people, doing accounting, doing all the stuff that is required to run a business.
In no disrespect to the people that you're bringing on, but it will always be remembered by the originator, right?
Yeah.
And so what you're getting is like I'm guessing like-minded Johnny Harris style journalism.
Yeah, that's right.
On this network.
And the goal, I think some of those old business models and ways and deals with talent, like how they worked, I'm actually really interested in them because they worked for a lot of years, and they still are working for some segment of the population. To bring in talented journalists, to empower them to have a big platform and a big voice and all the support so that they can just do their craft. That's what we're doing. But we are now inverting the brand. The brand is now secondary or below that. Like a lot of the audience won't know about NewPress. Like a lot of the audience will know about Christoph or Sam Ellis or, whatever future creators we bring on. They'll connect with them. And then the super fans might be like, oh yeah, it's a part of this bigger thing, NewPress, and I have access to their paywall and I get, exclusive podcasts or whatever. Those will be the super fans. The masses will just connect with their individual creator, their individual bundle, which to me is the future of media. It's people who want really specific niche personal connections as opposed to a one-size-fits-all mass brand where they get their journalism.
I do want to talk to you about the business part of that all, though, because as a person who just came out, it's expensive. I got to tell you, putting out quality journalism, and I'm not out there in the field like you are. I can only imagine what the expenses are like when you go out in the field. But it's not cheap, and it's not it's not like you start churning out the ad revenue right away on YouTube. So how do you create a situation in which you can support those journalists while also making sure that you're meeting your business goals and saying and making sure you pick the right advertisers? Like there are a lot of people who get money, but they aren't always good people.
Yes, yeah. That is the sort of minefield that we're navigating right now. And again, my partner has built effectively a production company that is very nimble and very scrappy. Like we produce a lot of really good stuff for very cheap, and my team are all of these kind of self-taught generalists, and we all just work very light touch for a lot of impact. And so that's step one, is keeping costs down for these productions, which is luckily at Vox, I got a lot of repetition doing every aspect of the thing of writing and filming and hosting and editing and animating. Like that's what I did for a lot of time. And then bringing on folks who I can also train to be generalists. But you got to make money. And luckily, there is this thriving kind of influencer economy that's been around for a decade. It's now maturing, and it is a world where there's a handful of brands who will give people with big audiences on the internet money to read an ad read in the middle of their video. And that is, again, it was sort of a creator economy, influencer economy thing, but we've gotten in on that to where most of our business is now those ad reads, like thank you, whatever, NordVPN or whatever is like a big sponsor of the channel.
Yeah.
And they don't care about the editorial. Like they don't care about and this is what's cool, is like these are direct to consumer brands who are just like, hey, I just need eyeballs. Like I don't care if you're covering the genocide in Myanmar. Like it's just make sure a lot of people watch it. So it's not like these sort of old blue chip brands that are really sensitive about like what their brand is next to. And that has enabled us to monetize our journalism with these ad reads. Cool. Now, one thing that we've learned from legacy media is that there has for a really long time been a subscriber funded model. You subscribe to the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post, you pay them money, and they're then beholden not just to their brands but also to their subscribers. That is our next sort of frontier, is what does it look like to bring in a smaller group of our audience? We have 7 million subscribers almost on my channel. How do we bring in just a small fraction of that to want to pay a few bucks a month to get access to a deeper version or a community? We think that that's our future because I want to be beholden to them. And we never cross any lines. The brands don't have any editorial feedback or anything, but it's still, I want to have a mix. And so I think the future of NewPress is going to be one where we have a paywall platform where the subscribers can actually support us. That's sort of what we're working on now.
I was very impressed with your partner, Izzy. She seems to know everything. I got to say, I really want an Izzy. I need to marry an Izzy. How do I find an Izzy?
Yeah, you need
I
an
mean,
Izzy.
a lot of my friends who are really successful in this independent journalism world, I ask them, like, well, who does that? Who does that? And they're like, oh, my wife does that. My wife does. I'm like, do I need a wife? Like, where do I get one? And what kind of quality should I look for?
Yeah. Izzy was a creator for a while. So she spent a lot of time on the front lines.
Right. So she really understands the business.
She understands the mechanics of the creative. She's a filmmaker like me. Like we were filmmakers before this, and so she understands the craft. She had a mind for business when she started her channel and was hiring people and doing operations and project management really early. And I was like, whoa, this is impressive. I wasn't. I was like, I just want to make stuff. Like I don't know how to build a business. And she decided she didn't want to live publicly. She wanted to be more a business leader and sort of a business person. She became the CEO of the company, and she is the reason it's scaled out. I don't think it necessarily has to be a life partner. I got lucky that my life partner happens to be that. What Izzy has that is useful is a mind for creativity meets business fundamentals. Like, what do we need to do to get this organization working? And that I believe that is the biggest challenge to creators coming from legacy world to this new world is like, how do you pay taxes? How do you hire people? How do you manage the people that you hire? Like none of that, like journalists, people who are really good at journalism aren't just suddenly really good at like business fundamentals. And
no, I spent months just trying to like set up my taxes and bank accounts.
Yeah.
And
Nightmare.
I hate this
Nightmares. So I think there's two
it.
solves for this. I think number one is I think there's going to become an industry of like fractionalized operations people. Like I think because this is a big problem, I think there's going to be companies, and I already see some, who will come in and be like, hey, your operation is fairly simple relative to big companies. We will just give you, 10 hours a week to do all of that for you, all of your accounting, all of your this and that, and you'll have sort of fractionalized operations. I think the other thing is what you'll see is people
like Uber for operations.
Yeah, like operations as a service. I think that's is a good business. We actually thought about doing that once we were scaling. We're like, wow, that could be the thing because it's a needed thing. The other is I think you'll have more stuff like NewPress where you have like collectives of people where it's run by an umbrella. I think you'll have VC or like private equity type money coming in here to like buy out parts of a personal channel and then run it and operate it, but own 60% of it. Yeah, I do too.
Because then you're just going corporate.
Then you're kind of just going, yeah. So we've stayed away from that, but that's a model that's cropping up. But then I think there's a lot of like find a business partner that wants to go in on this as a founder, as a co-founder of your channel, who has a strength that is the opposite of yours, and go in as a partnership. To me, that's what this is. You've just started a company. You're at a startup right now. Like you're an entrepreneur, and that's not for everyone. And so I think that you have to be entrepreneurial minded. But I really hope
I am.
That it sounds like you are, and so it's like you have the stomach for this.
I still want an Izzy.
Yeah, and you should find one. Like you should find a business partner or something because it is a skill set. I don't have that skill set. I'm really grateful that I have a partner who we'll do that because we've been able to grow it to what it is now because
Yeah.
of that. And I'm shielded from a lot of operations and stuff.
And you can really just spend all your time being creative and calling and reporting and booking and doing all the stuff that takes to make really amazing content like the stuff that you make.
Yeah.
I do want to talk to you about like the rules of journalism and how they're being broken right now. And in a lot of ways, like as someone who's been a journalist for 15 years, like some of these rules maybe need to be broken to be like built back up again. Maybe there's something to it. I love the way that you really like over explain your process. I like that like people can see you like typing and calling and you say, I called this person because of this and I tried this and this person hung up on me. And I know they do that in like documentaries a lot sometimes and but it feels like more authentic and real. And you're like, and if you don't believe me, just look at the source there. And you're very open with apologies, which I like it's super refreshing. And I've taken that and I really admire you for that. And I want to bring that into my process as well. I mean, I also write a Substack and I write in it like, and then I call it this person. And then they kind of convinced me later that maybe this is that.
That's powerful stuff.
Yes.
It's powerful stuff for the
that's
viewer.
How we fix the problem.
To be like, hey, we're all skeptical of big mainstream institutions now. We don't believe that what they say, like we've been duped by, especially from a media perspective, 24-hour news, this sort of like, we don't trust. And I think those institutions have lost our trust. I think there's other things going on as well. And I think social media has a dark side. So I want to caveat that I'm not some like anti-social media or anti-old school media.
No.
And like social media is good. Like there are problems everywhere. Yeah. So
they do great journalism too.
I would say that the more transparent, the more open about your process and your limitations and your gray area, you're wrestling with like, what do I think about this?
Right.
The more trust you imbue. And it's that word authenticity, which I think is a little bit sort of overused, but like that is the currency for trust. Now, accuracy.
You have to
and
show people how you
factuality
commit
is too.
journalism. They don't know how you do it.
Yeah, exactly. And they think it's some sacred act that you have to have like a credential for. I didn't go to journalism school. Like I just sort of am like, I'm a curious guy who's very interested in facts and wants to document my experience being curious. And that today, I believe, is journalism.
And get to the closest version of the truth
yes,
that you can possibly get to.
Or recognizing that, hey, this is the closest version of my truth, and I have shown my work. I've shown my work. If you disagree with how I've gotten here, at least you know. And my favorite comments are the ones that say like, hey, I disagree with where you ended on this. I disagree with your perspective, but I can't say that you weren't forthright with how you got there. And like, I think that imbues a lot of a sense of trust. I think it's vital. And luckily the language of the internet is one of personal expression. It's the word I did this, I saw this is kind of like a bad word in traditional journalism.
Oh yeah, no,
like,
it's the voice of God.
Yeah, it's got to be voice of God. It's got to be authoritative. And I think that the move towards
I only write an I now. It's all me. You got a problem? Come to me.
Yes, totally. Which it has some it's just double-edged sword in and of itself, but
True.
It does allow for transparency to a new degree, and I think that's a good thing. I think and accountability. I get called out. They come to me and they call me out if I get something wrong, and then I show up and go, I got something wrong, and like they instead of being like, I don't trust you anymore, they're like, oh, he did apologize. He's a human. He can get things wrong every once in a while, and I recommit to like I'm gonna do better. Thank you for calling me out, and now we're in a discussion that is really refining and powerful. And I think there's a lot of potential for restoring trust with these new rules of it being a conversation. And again, I think there's a lot of pitfalls with that where people can leverage what is the parasocial, where they can be friends with the audience and then they can say a lot of things that aren't true and people will believe them. Like that is a big problem in this sort of free world. But if you're committed to facts and truth, there's an audience out there who wants it and will sniff out if you're authentic and transparent. And I think that's a good thing for journalism.
What do you think it will look like in 10 years from now? How will people consume it?
I think everyone will be in their own silos so deeply. Ideologically, I think that's going to continue. Everyone's going to be in ideological silos more than they are today and be living in different realities. It's really that's my sort of pessimistic take. But I also believe that there will be silo fatigue echo chamber
Okay.
fatigue. And people will be like, dude, I'm kind of tired of this, what's become sort of propaganda. I want like a more nourishing take. And I believe that there will be a market of people. We want to be a big part of that who come to the news market and say, we're here to give you a more nourishing perspective, meaning it's more like a well-balanced meal. It's got all the things, and you will come away with a deeper understanding. And I think the buzz of understanding will resonate with people more than just ideology. I don't know. We're not going to save the world with this, but like, I do think that there's a mass market for it. And the more we can make it fun and entertaining and engaging, we can compete with the sort of ideological stuff, which is a lot easier to make.
I mean, let's be honest, on YouTube, there are a lot of like ideological battles, products, clickbait, red meat, left meat. It's not just YouTube. It's all over the internet. It's X. It's here. It's like, okay, you know what kind of content is going to play and how it's going to play. And so like, how do we make sure that we don't fall into those traps? Because we know it's the only way to keep, people watching, a business alive. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. There's an incentive for it. It's like a really intense incentive. And we felt this. I felt myself get pulled into that like outrage incentive structure where it's like the more angry I am and the more there's a villain, the more I'll have like a passionate audience. And there's entire media companies built off of that human impulse, which again, to me is like the low-hanging fruit for human attention. I believe that there is also a human impulse and a human desire for good information. Like when something clicks for you and you understand it, to me, that's actually a better feeling. It's a harder feeling to get to because information is complicated and chaotic. But when you get it, when you really understand the context of, I don't know, the Middle East or something, there's this really amazing good feeling that doesn't require you to be angry and emotional, but still gives you that delivery. And that's what we are selling. We are selling a sense of understanding and not just a sense of my side is right and the other side is terrible.
Because people feel threatened by what they don't know about, really.
Yeah.
And it's really all about feeling safe. Because people feel very unsafe and insecure in this world.
Totally.
And listen, you can crush it on the internet if you keep talking to the same people and telling them exactly what they want to hear to make them feel safe. But if you actually show them what the world is really about, it's kind of not a safe place. It's kind of an insecure place. It's kind of a place where there's actually a lot of gray. There isn't really a lot of right and wrong, red or blue. It's kind of in the middle. And that can make people feel really uncomfortable.
Totally. Absolutely. And we try to do this thing where we present that complexity, but then we do give some boxes and some clear takeaways for people to walk away and be like, okay, this is all this complexity, but at least I understand this and this, or at least I understand that there is hope for this. Like I try to have a constructive angle to our pieces that isn't just either doom or gloom or like, this is all so complex. And that's where the storytelling
Where there's nothing
comes
I can
in.
do about it.
Yeah, totally. That's where the storytelling, that's where things like music and presentation, like if someone feels something, they feel connected to the information, then I think they walk away with a little bit more of an optimistic perspective. Like, okay, like people are working on this. There's movement here. It's not just doom and gloom. But that's a fine balance. And sometimes I sort of don't hit it perfectly. But that's certainly the intent with what we make.
NewPress. Do you see it expanding to have more like roundtable talking head type shows, the kind that you see on YouTube growing and expanding right now? Frankly, sort of what I'm doing. Do you see that, or do you think that that sort of like contributes to a conversation where people don't come up?
No, I absolutely see a lot of value in partly being able to react to like the news of the week or like what's happening. That's one of our weaknesses. We take like 4 months to make a video. Like we do these deep dives that take forever. Like we're not reacting to the news. And so I don't know, every channel that we add to NewPress will expand what it is. And we're creating that right now, frankly. Like we are looking at lots of different creators and deciding, is that a good contribution to this broader mission that we have to nourish and educate and give context and history to the news? And that's an open discussion. But one thing we are actively looking at is a weekly news analysis show that is not sort of ideological reaction, but is explanation, makes sense of what's happening in, India, Pakistan, or with tariffs or something like that.
Right.
Makes sense of it in a dispassionate way. Lower production value, not the big sort of animated maps and the custom music and all of that. And yet the same rigor and sort of visual beauty that you can expect from every sort of NewPress channel is the goal. So yes, we're open to that. We're even open to like more obscure formats, like I don't know, like we've thought about an animated show, like a animated news explainer. There are no rules. Like as long as we are presenting like quality, curated, rigorous journalism. I'm like, dude, it doesn't matter what form it takes, as it needs to meet people where they're at. So like, we may have a newsletter someday that's an animated, strip of news explanation, but it's like cartoons. Like, who knows? I don't know.
Looney Tunes, whatever.
Looney Tunes explains the news. Why not? Like this is so I don't know what form it takes, but more sort of traditional talking head, quick react is absolutely on our mind as like a potential format.
All right, I do want to talk to you about global affairs since you are an expert on that and you have been, on the front lines recently. Your most recent video was about Arctic warfare in Finland. I actually happened to be there with the president when I was a White House correspondent during his first term. It was his meeting in Helsinki with Vladimir Putin. And I do remember just like the anxiety in the air just about living so close to Russia. They sing songs about their heritage to remember who they are because they get Russian propaganda being sent to them all the time through the airwaves. You were there. It's an incredible piece. I highly recommend you sit down. Bundle up and watch it. Johnny actually sleeps in the snow. In the snow with the Finnish army. I am so happy you did that, and I did not. But it's brilliant. So you just came back from that trip. Like, what's the vibe there right now?
The Finns are such
lovely people, right?
Lovely people with such deep conviction. They have such deep conviction, but they're also very quiet about it. And so I went up to the north and suited up in Arctic warfare gear and joined a military exercise where they were out in the woods on their skis with guns doing like a live combat type exercise. And I saw a side of like the Finnish spirit that like really impressed me. And it is people who hear stories about being invaded by Russia, decades ago now, but those stories are still so alive.
Not that long ago.
Yeah, it's like they're like, hey, my grandfather, my great grandfather, like these are stories that are very close. And then every Finnish man is required to serve in the military, and so all of them are exposed to this culture. They come back home. Every Finnish home has multiple generations of people who have been close to face with this reality, which is that this is a country that has a 800-mile border with Russia and has been invaded by Russia and is constantly kind of in the shadow of Russia, and they are prepared. They have built their entire society around being prepared, not just in the military, which I saw with embedding with them, but they have got bunkers. They've got enough bunkers for everyone. In Helsinki, they have more bunker space than they need.
It's crazy how deep they go and how big they are.
It's crazy. It is. They're all over the place.
I didn't even know about that when I was there for a week.
They're so quiet about it. Like they're just like, hey, we got these bunkers. The bunkers are like used as like sports courts and swimming pools, and then but at a moment's notice they could be turned into a bomb shelter, like ready to withstand like a nuclear blast. Like, and then every person, it's not just the physical infrastructure in the military. Every person has a deep training in emergency preparedness. They coordinate all the different sectors, like the business people and the civil society. They all get together once a year and they have like emergency preparedness meetings that are like, it is a completely different mindset of people who are now, the world was like, hey, Finland, you're so overkill. But now they're like, oh, Finland, you weren't overkill.
Yeah.
We're going back to a world of like potential, we see a land invasion happening in Europe. Like, that we thought was over, and it turns out Finland actually has a lot of wisdom that a lot of the world has lost because they've moved away from these sort of traditional ways of preparing. So I was there. I went to the Russian border. It's quiet. It's closed down.
Right.
It's completely closed. There's no movement between it now. And there's just a tense quietness everywhere where it's like everything's silent and peaceful, but like they know that at any moment things could change. They've joined the NATO alliance, so now they have that as a security guarantee. But now they're helping the NATO alliance be better at their job, and that's what was sort of part of this. Was Finland, little Finland with 5 million people, was like training American and Canadian troops on how to fight wars. And it's an interesting time, and this little country's kind of right at the pivot point. So it was a really informative piece for me.
Did they talk at all about President Trump and like their concern that he wasn't able to end the war in Ukraine in a day like he promised, or the sense that he's actually being played by Vladimir Putin?
Yeah, there was a lot of that. It was sort of all happening while I was there. Right. Vance had just come to the summit and said, like, you Europeans have it all backwards. There was all this abandonment sort of language towards Europe from the United States. And NATO doesn't mean much if it doesn't have the United States. And so a lot of people were like, yeah, we're glad we joined NATO. We feel safer, but like, who knows? Like, we may be on our own. But they have this phrase that like all of them said. Almost everyone I talked to said this phrase that kind of like, I was like, is this scripted? Like I talked to like 35 different people around the country while I was there. And they all said, we're not scared. We're just concerned. And that like really summarizes.
So Finnish.
Yeah. It's just like, hey, we're not scared. We're not emotional about this. We're just concerned and we're ready. And if they come, we are ready. Like that's the mindset, is they're ready.
Be prepared. Yeah.
Be prepared. Yes.
Okay. So my family comes from Poland, which is sandwiched between Germany and obviously Russia. My mom was actually born in Poland. So like they are totally have anxiety all the time. I think it was passed on to me genetically. Yeah. They definitely reacted to war differently than the Finnish people. And my grandmother is constantly watching TV Polonia and the war in Ukraine play out and like sobs and like just knows how terrible it is. So
yeah, and a lot of Eastern European countries who rely on NATO are seeing this and saying, like, can we trust this alliance? The trust in the alliance for everyone else on the front line is actually way scarier right now for those countries who don't have... Like, Finland is hardcore. That's why I call the title the most prepared country in the world, because I really believe that even though you've got the Israels and the Polands of the world who are very militarized and prepared and close-knit because of a threat, Finland is like on another level. And so NATO really matters to the Lithuanias and the Estonias of the world, the Polands of the world. Although Poland is now going bananas on their defense. They're like hardcore spending. Oh, yeah. And they're like ready to be like, we don't want to trust anyone. We're going to do this for ourselves. And I think you're going to see that like everywhere, just rearming to prepare for stuff.
Which is actually exactly what Trump wanted. I mean, in fairness, the Europeans probably weren't spending enough in defense. Yeah. And if you want to look at the first 100 days and where he was successful on the world stage, it was that. He managed to get, he managed to get the Europeans to pay for their defense.
I think they're, cajoling them into doing that with fear and abandonment and potential sort of like
cajole is a nice word.
Like rocking the whole Western alliance, 70 years of peace and stability. Definitely like playing with fire, but yes, absolutely, there is a wake-up call situation happening here. And I think the invasion of Ukraine was a giant wake-up call. I think Trump really threatening to be like, hey, even if we don't leave NATO, we're not going to show up the way that you think we would, is a pretty huge wake-up call for folks. I just hope it doesn't turn into the old days where it's every man for himself, which is like, that's the worst case scenario. Like we have alliances and deterrence and stability for a reason. That's the best arrangement we've figured out as humans to like not blow each other up in large scales. And it's like we're going into a time where every man for himself, it's a little worrisome to me.
And you've been on the front line seeing a lot of that. Okay, I got to talk to you about Greenland, another place where you spent a lot of time. Another absolutely gorgeous piece of journalism. I mean,
that place did all the work for me. It's just one of the most beautiful places I've ever been.
Oh my God, stunning. And I've been to Denmark, but I've never been to Greenland before. But it is incredible. Those pictures, the family, the Inuit family that you spend time with. I want to know what it tastes like to eat that. What is it called? That whale?
Yeah, narwhal. Yeah, narwhal. Narwhal. Yeah.
I want to eat it. I want to try it.
Yeah, it was actually super delicious, and it just tasted like the fattiest salmon tuna you've ever had, but it's like
Ooh.
literally the blubber of narwhal dipped in like soy sauce. It was,
Sounds fab.
I went there to sort of just see how people live. Like that was my curiosity
Right.
that led me there. I knew there was all this Arctic stuff. Like there's all this race for the Arctic as it melts and geopolitical control. But I wanted to like do more of a cultural piece. But when you're there, you can't move away from it. There's so much development happening in the town of Nuuk, this little town. There's so much investment going into it. There's so much like Chinese and American efforts to like fight for influence over this giant island, the biggest island in the world. And because of where it's placed, it's so geostrategically important, not only for conflict and deterrence, but also for resources. It's got tons of resources. So I ended up getting pulled into this bigger thing of like the geopolitics of this massive frozen island, and then sort of juxtaposing that with like going hunting for seal on the ice with sled dogs, and like that's all happening in one place, this old way of living clashing with these global tensions. And it's a sort of bizarre mix, but I saw a side of the Arctic geopolitical tension that I'd never seen before.
So many feels, and it feels also that like the people there are so powerless to all this stuff going on, even to their own colonizers, you could say, the Danes. I wanted to ask you though, do you think Trump is right to fight for Greenland? Like, do you think he is right to try to take it over?
No.
Okay.
I think that Trump's bluster around Greenland or the Panama Canal are a really great way to open the door that we closed a long time ago, which is the door, where big countries, if they are powerful, have a natural right to take land that they are capable of taking. That is how the world operated forever. Big, powerful countries get to take what they can. And the small ones just have to deal with it. And then after it got really bad and we almost destroyed the entire world, we all got together and said, hey, guys, let's put an end to it. Like, let's be done with this, because even though it's very natural, it's a recipe for disaster. And we've done that. We did that. Like, there's border skirmishes.
And we let a lot of those colonies go. And those colonies are now independent.
Yes. And we stopped the, land grab mentality. Now, there's exceptions to that, obviously, but the great powers kind of stopped doing that. Now, Russia's invasion of Ukraine was a huge deal because of that. Trump coming in and sort of opening the door again to a world, an 1870s world where you could just go take land, is a worrisome thing to me, because it is very natural. It's actually the more natural state for countries to be in, is the land grab state. And we've done this
buy all these Boeing planes and have all this artillery if you're not using it? It's just getting old, right? Is that what they're thinking?
Yeah, and expansion. It's very normal for us to want to expand our position. That is the most natural human thing to do. And so we've put an end to that and replaced it with laws and order and all of these things. And I'm worried that we're entering into a time where that experiment is getting really, the international law and international norms are being kind of dismantled. And so no, I don't think it's a responsible thing to say we should buy Greenland. If you want to ramp up your alliance with Denmark or vie for an independent Greenland and be an ally with them, go for it. But full on, hey, I'm going to just take this over. I believe it's all a ploy. I think it's a sort of deal thing where they're going to do this crazy thing, and then they're going to kind of dial back a little bit and get some better mineral deal or something, and everyone will take a big collective sigh of relief and be like, okay, good, he didn't pursue the crazy take over Greenland thing, and we're all going to feel like it was a good outcome. I think that's probably the end game here, but you're playing with fire. That's what having studied the history of international conflict. We're playing with fire when we mess with these delicate alliances we've painstakingly built over 80 years.
Yeah, and Inuit people are already none too happy to be colonized by the Danes. It seems like they've suffered because of it. You showed this in the piece that they've suffered with suicide, depression, alcoholism. Imagine having a third colonizer on top of that.
Yeah. It is a very old story of just the outsiders will come in and take what they want. I'm going to the Panama Canal in a few weeks, and oh
wow,
I'm kind of going to have a similar story with these people who remember when the U.S. owned that land for up until just a couple decades ago. And it's like they remember what it's like to be like, yeah, we have our own culture, but we have these imperial overlords that are always in control of what really happens. It's an old way of doing things, and I think we as a world need to update to letting people have their land and determine what they do with that land and how they govern it, and not just the strongest power wins. So I obviously feel strongly about that one.
Yeah, I mean, you're an expert in this topic. I know you had a time crunch. Of course, I want to ask you about Elon Musk. I'm guessing we don't have enough time to get into the problem with Elon Musk, right?
God. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we'll skip Elon this time. I can answer one question about Elon Musk. He's quite the character.
We should make this a regular thing, though. Johnny, I feel like I've learned so much, not just about where media is going. I'm excited to see NewPress and how you expand and grow. And I've learned a lot, and I hope the listeners have as well. And for those of you who aren't on YouTube, I know I have some listeners who are, more DC, kind of hill crowd. Maybe they're not YouTubers. You got to check out Johnny. If it's your first, if it's your first exposure to YouTube journalism, it is very high quality journalism.
Thank you so much. This was fun to chat, and thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you. That was another episode of The Tara Palmeri Show. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you will follow this show, rate it, review it, share it with your friends, leave some comments. Email me, tara@tarapalmeri.com. This show is still new, so I want all the feedback I can get from you. You can get all of my exclusive reporting by signing up for my newsletter, The Red Letter, at tarapalmeri.com. I'll be back again this week.